In a somewhat small departure from convention, I would like to request all of you to take a minute and visualize about the kind of country we wish to have. We may see it as our only cow whose milk we depend on for our livelihood, or as a baby who is crawling, but who is just about to start walking. Ask yourself, how do I encourage the cow to produce more, or the baby to stand up and walk on its own? This leads me to pose the question, what can each of us do to deliver a prosperous future for our beloved country? There are key ingredients which I recognize as central in the development of Kenya. Some of these have been mentioned by His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo and Akin Moboguje in their article, Elements of Development, 1991, African Leadership Institute, as comprising strategic and visionary leadership, manpower, women, and youth economic empowerment, leveraging on information, communication, and technology, proper administration and management of natural resources, and provision of affordable health and education. Henceforth, I propose to focus on the centrality of key governance institutions in the development of Kenya. It is noteworthy that this assembly has on board a reasonable mix of key and influential players in our national engineering. The program, too, has commensurately made an effort to embrace our tribulations and seek, if not identify, remedies. Kenya, like most post-colonial African countries, has endured a dull spell of poor governance, occasionally marred by civil strife. Despite the gravity of the violence after the 2007-2008 general elections, the story of conflict and strife within nations is not exclusive to Kenya. It is one that has been witnessed in a plethora of other jurisdictions around the globe, in countries in the throes of national self-discovery, and in many cases, consequently led to cohesion and growth. Given that we can't be, and perhaps shouldn't be, an exception, we surely must be on this path. Those of my generation will remember that Kenya experienced high economic growth in the first 2 decades after independence, but all that changed from the 1980s when economic performance deteriorated and per capita income started to decline. By the year 2001, over half of the Kenyan population lived below the poverty line on less than $1 per day. This, unfortunately, is so much the position even as I speak this afternoon. With the inflation rate now, as at 6 December, standing at 18.9%. A glaring realization arising out of an examination of this period is the fact that there was an underlying streak of weak public institutions and an authoritarian executive. One underlying causes of the 2007-2008 violence in Kenya was the manifestation of the fact that the presidency is seen as economic empowerment to tribe and cronies of the presidency. And I think Judge Waki found that this was so in his report. This as opposed to all the citizenry. Before 1991, Parliament was a department in the office of the president. As a matter of fact, members of Parliament went for their pay from the office of the president, while the judiciary took and obeyed instructions from the office of the president. The concept of separation of powers and independence of institutions of governance were alien. Before 15th January 2008, for those of you who remember, the Parliament of Kenya had not undergone any democratic process to elect a National Assembly Speaker. He was largely handpicked away from parliamentary dynamics. But on that day, we witnessed a break which I expect will endure. While we may have mused over our failings and at times blamed the colonial masters and their techniques, e.g., divide and rule, in time we realized that our destiny lay in our hands. The future was beckoning. The proclamation of the Constitution of Kenya in 2010 is a landmark in our history. The three arms of government, the executive, parliament, and the judiciary, must be visibly separate in mandate by law and fact, and the process of appointment of office holders thereat must reflect the endeavor to practice that independence. In the last 3 years, we have all seen how the separation of powers principle has played out in Kenya, pitting parliament against the executive and the judiciary, the executive with the judiciary being largely on the same side until just last week. Perhaps for the first time in the history of Kenya, the judiciary against the executive, with the decision of the High Court to order issuance of warrants of arrest against the President of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir. Other important institutions include financial sector bodies, namely the Central Bank, Kenya Revenue Authority, the Stock Exchange, political parties, media, and the international community. Kenya has taken appropriate steps to create open, pluralistic, and participatory institutions of governance which are set to become more effective, accountable, transparent, technologically savvy, and responsive to the needs of the citizenry. I urge all of you to mentally retreat into your specific institutions and reflect on individual measures that you will put in place to ensure better services, which will translate to improved welfare for the people of Kenya. With the increase in internally generated revenue, there is an urgent need for more transparent and accountable institutions to guard against corruption. From my position as the Speaker of the Kenya National Assembly, I pledge to support the new Anti-Corruption Commission team, as I hope all of us will. Further, where justice, peace, and stability prevail, investor confidence is built, and so is the country. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I would like to briefly highlight what I see as national yet necessary burden with respect to the independent constitutional commissions. The Constitution creates several independent commissions, each with an average of 9 commissioners and salaries to commissioners averaging 1 million Kenya shillings a month. Without more, it is my view that this is much more than we bargained for, even as we pursue independence of institutions. Will indeed be, with the benefit of hindsight, more financially sound and practical to limit the number of commissioners in each commission to perhaps 2, and empower the commissions with competent technical staff or otherwise merge commissions. If you look at other countries, you will find that in fact this is the position. You do not need commissions manned by 9 men and women, or 15 in some cases. This is food for thought, even as we continue with the implementation of the Constitution. Further, I wish to take this opportunity to plead with my colleagues, politicians, to work together and exercise restraint in their pronouncements and conduct during this reform and/or unprecedented change era that we are compelled to undergo as a nation, particularly in the light of the 2012 elections, because if we do not do so, we risk losing the gains we have made and could easily slip into anarchy, and unnecessarily so.